Thank you. Now we have some breaking news.
Yeah, we do. It's about that awful murder of Eliane Andam in Croydon on Wednesday. She was just 15 years old. Police now telling us that a 17-year-old boy has been charged with the murder of Eliane Andam. So we'll bring you more details on that as we get them through. But that 17-year-old boy has been charged with the murder of Eliane in the last few minutes. Let's return to Nigel and Claire. What did you make, Claire, of what Mr Griffith had to say? I got the impression you weren't entirely convinced.
My face does tend to give that away. I find it frustrating when we keep harking back to the pandemic as a reason for why the economy is in such a state, and also Putin's invasion of Ukraine. But it's not the only reason, and everything comes back to those two issues. But what isn't answered is what you're going to do. We do have the highest tax burden, as you said, since the 1940s. I think it's unlikely to come down any time under a Conservative government, and that really pains me to say, because I think once you increase taxes, people are spending more. It's very hard to take that back, and you expect then the state to deliver more. So once you expect the state to deliver more, to spend more on health, to spend more on education, as you would rightly expect, to then have to reverse that and not have the money coming into the Treasury, something's got to give somewhere along the line. So it's one of these occasions where I think that we've left it too late if we want to cut taxes. I don't subscribe to the Liz Truss let's do it all in one go theory, but I do think she had a point. You need to be able to reduce the taxation burden on people without reducing your spending. What you do in that gap is the issue. And that's what she hadn't costed out. But I find it sort of profoundly depressing that we're having this we must be prudent approach without any further insight into what the government is going to do in the future.
Nigel?
I thought that's a rather good analysis, I thought, of where we stand. I mean, what Andrew Griffith was talking about was not tax. The tax burden is not caused by COVID or the Ukraine war. Inflation, and certainly part of it, is caused by that. So I'm not quite sure he got the idea that suddenly we're paying more taxes.
Well, COVID, he brought up COVID.
He brought up COVID, yeah, but I mean, even with COVID, although we spent an awful lot of money on that, the idea that the overall tax burden based on the 2019 figures, which is what the IFS is talking about, has gone up because of that, just doesn't seem to gel to me, because the other things that have been happening is that we're dealing with pensions going up hugely, that they're heading for 79 billion more.
You want to scrap triple lock, don't you?
I do want. Well, I want to scrap the 2% element of triple lock. Yeah, on the basis that pensioners will get a rise based on earnings or inflation, but not get the automatic 2% at a time when inflation is very low and earnings are low. And over the last 10 years, that 2% has been used 4 times. So it shows that...
You may not feel that way when you're a pensioner, though.
Well, maybe not. But I still think that we've got to do something about pensions getting out of control. And also there's the element of fairness there. We've had a situation now that because of inflation being 10% at the end of last year, pensioners got a 10% rise, that working people got 4 or 5%. That seems to me that we're losing the sense of fairness. And as the ageing population grows, that also means that where we have 3.5 working people paying for pensions now, we're going down to 2.5.
It becomes unsustainable, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there is a myth around that people have paid in their pensions, therefore they should have the money. Well, of course, they haven't. They were paying for the previous generation of pensioners.
Yeah. Should we have a look, because we teased it a little bit earlier on, a bit of Mr Musk?
Yes.
Claire, the richest man in the world has been down to the town of Eagle Pass. What's he been doing?
This is right. So this is Elon Musk, very, very rich individual, going down to look at the migrants crossing the border from Mexico across the Rio Grande and into the United States. What's interesting is his slightly different take on this is that he is actually more pro-migration, pro-immigrant, but he doesn't want people breaking the law. And I find myself in the unusual circle of agreeing with him on this. I think that this conversation has to be had about what migratory needs your country has, but not the breaking law aspect of it. And what he wants to do is increase the ways that people can come into the country legally with a visa or...
Which that sounds like the argument we're having over here.
Well, it does.
Absolutely does.
Yes.
And it just takes...
Substitute the English Channel for the Rio Grande.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's quite interesting to see this conversation now opening up without having this kind of knee-jerk reaction to building a wall or pushing boats back, depending on which side of the world you're on. It's interesting that somebody is looking at it by saying, these people are breaking the law. How can we stop that?
Well, actually, we've got some video of what he actually is saying. Here's Elon Musk with his solution to the crisis.
I am, as an immigrant to the United States, I'm extremely pro-immigrant. And I believe that we need a greatly expanded legal immigration system and that we should let anyone in the country who is hardworking and honest and will be a contributor to the United States. We should have expedited legal approval for anyone who sort of falls in that category. But then by the same token, we should also not be allowing people in the country if they're breaking the law. That doesn't make sense. The law is there for a reason.
Oh, well, he should be advising Suella Braverman then, shouldn't he?
Just, yeah. I mean, what it does show is that this really is a global problem, that every country is facing a problem with migration. No country seems to have come up with an answer to how it should be dealt with. And I mean, Suella Braverman, I think, missed an opportunity when she went to America to make her speech. But the most important thing about that, and she's on Lee Anderson's show later on tonight, the most important thing about that is the idea that countries must all get together, the world must get together to try and solve the crisis. 100 million people on the move at the moment. This can only be dealt with globally, and we can't have nonsense like, oh, well, immigrants must stay in the first country they come to, because then they get a disproportionate amount of people. Turkey's got 4 million refugees, which makes our problem look absolutely tiny.
Yeah, oh, yeah, when you put it in those
Well, I mean, the
terms,
real solution is to make those countries from which they are fleeing better places for them to live.
Of course,
but
ultimately you're right.
How do you do that?
Well, ultimately...
The world is
Nigel, I
never
hate to
going
say
to
it,
be
Nigel,
fair.
we are out of time, and I've got to stop you both there. We'll see you later on. Let's have a look at the weather.